I'm Matt Lynch, and here's how I see the election. Most of you know that I'm a Christian conservative, and although Donald Trump was not my first choice, he's now my enthusiastic choice. I know if you're a conservative, you've probably already decided to vote for Donald because you're concerned about the Supreme Court like I am, and the out-of-control federal government. And if you're a liberal Democrat, well, you're going to vote for Hillary, and I'm not likely to change your mind here today. So I'd like to speak to the 10% of you that are still undecided and maybe even thinking about that third-party candidate. I suspect that the reason you're still undecided is because you're not hardcore left and you're not hardcore right. You'd just like to have a government that actually works, that was able to function, to keep us safe, and to generally get the job done. I bet you're frustrated by all the corruption in Washington. Well, I am too. The fact is that career politicians have a stranglehold on our government. Our country is supposed to be for we the people, but instead it's always about what's best for the politicians. The result is that politicians get rich while the people suffer. And frankly, we cannot fix our government unless we change the system and get rid of these corrupt, lifelong politicians. We must have new voices and new blood in Washington, D.C., and the only way that will ever happen is with term limits. You know we've had term limits in Ohio here for some time, and it's worked pretty well. But not in Washington. Politicians lie to our faces, then they go to D.C. to join the corruption and follow the orders of their lobbyists. And they just never go home. Meanwhile, things get worse. With a lousy economy, $20 trillion in debt, and constant threats from terrorists. But let's face it, Hillary has always been part of that corrupt political system. She spent her entire life devoted to political maneuvering and campaigning, saying and doing whatever it takes to get elected, and getting filthy rich along the way. While Donald Trump, like him or not, he spent his lifetime building his business and raising his family. And I think that's why voters, both Democrats and Republicans, they support Donald. Because he's not a politician. He's not a Democrat. He's not really a Republican either. He's just an American. And right now, I think that's what we need, an American. He actually reminds me of old blood and guts George Patton. Remember George? George Patton was definitely rough around the edges, but he was smart and he knew how to get the job done. The politicians hate Donald because they know that 75% of Americans want term limits. And folks, until we fix the system with term limits, we'll never get rid of the kind of people that are there now, and we'll never have real change. But we'll never get term limits unless we have a president who's not a politician and wants to actually end the corruption in Washington. You've heard Trump say that the system is rigged, and you know it's true. It's not enough just to have better policies in Washington. We have to fix the corrupt political system that's controlled by politicians, and that means we must have term limits. 15 states already have term limits, but Congress will never do it themselves. We must have a president who's an outsider, who doesn't need the lobbyists, and who's willing to fight for term limits in Washington. And that's why I'm voting for Donald Trump. He's our best chance to change things and get our country back on track. So if you're undecided, give serious consideration to voting for Donald Trump and ending the corruption in Washington, D.C. As for me, well, I'm on the Trump train, and I'm asking you to join me. I'm Matt Lynch, and that's how I see it.